Welcome to my new podcast, Scout Report, where I'm focusing purely on Callof Dragons. This could be anything to do with the upcoming patches, current gameplay, current bugs, internal server drama going on, anything in that regard. But the cool concept of this podcast is it is always done live. So while we're doing this podcast, you can always tune in during the live streams of it and ask those questions towards the end of the podcast, where your voice, the community, is heard and we answer those questions and talk about it during the end of the podcast. So thank you for watching, and let's get into today's episode of the Scout Report. So welcome, this is Scout Report, and just as we always want it to, the cinematic refreshes at the perfect time. But we're going to be talking about patch 1.02 today. 2.0 specifically, because there will be multiple iterations of the patch. And we've got a cool little feature here where we can obviously go in game while we are talking about certain features, which we are going to be doing because obviously the patch notes have come out. We're going to just discuss them in this nice little gentle podcast, and during any of these points, if you are maybe rewatching this again for the first time on the actual channel, you can participate live with us all. We are in the live chat. There's a lot of them having a good time. And if there's any questions during these topics, we are going to try and make it interactive where I answer the relevant questions from you, the community, during, as you can see, a Q&A or a patch notes, or maybe internal drama. Who knows? That's the whole point of Scout Report. It's going to be just a nice community-based podcast where we just cover different topics that you all enjoy, right? So it's a nice, calm atmosphere. That's what I was hoping for. So let's just get into it, right? We are going to go into patch 1.02. So here we are. And it is a long one. There's a lot of stuff that came in this brand new patch. I've already done a video on it, and you can check those videos out. You can also see in the future there's going to be a few more videos on this area, but we are going to break it all down in this podcast because I'm going to see chat and see different people talk about it. So for example, before we get into even my thoughts, we've got Zana FHX that says the new patch is nice. The only complaint is that they don't want to remove the RNG of the pet skill, which is honestly, I think, the biggest talking point, and I think where the podcast eventually is going to lead down to that path, right? It's going to be the way we all talk about the most. So what we're going to go into is the first area. So the whole first area of this whole Q&A section is to do with basically Season 2 or the seasonal resets in the game, because a lot of players do complain about seasonal resets in the regards that they dislike maybe upgrading heroes or upgrading those artifacts, even dragon trials. I can kind of sympathize with the dragon trials a little bit, even though in the video I was a bit more heated, but it's because the whole system, as you guys know, all work together, right? So all of the heroes, artifacts, and dragon trials kind of all work hand in hand, because you all start at level 1. You obviously have 1 star on the dragon trials, and when you get like a level 10, hero, it actually helps you push through the early stages of the dragon trial. So the dragon trial, technically, like leveling or difficulty, technically progresses with the hero levels, which is kind of nice, right? But again, a lot of players don't like it, and maybe some guys in chat will obviously talk about it while we're going through this next point. But I want to say, in my eyes, I think season resets are good. I think the whole point of a season reset is to balance things out and reward activity and the active player. But obviously this isn't for everyone, right? But we can see maybe in the future they might tailor or change how a season reset works to a little bit more of a friendlier approach, while still maintaining the main concept of what a season reset is, right? So in chat we've got Kebi, which is, I have a question about the Dragon Trial. Is it the same hardness in S1 Plus into S2? Because A lot of players, which is a really good question, are in S1 Plus still. And if you're wondering what we're talking about there, originally in the game, and before the current game you had Season 1, Season 1 Plus, and then you went into Season 2. And you can see this still through this area. I do apologize on the camera hiding the little bits above here. But we have the Burning Stars and Dragon Calls. This is what the original Season 1 is. So this is what Season 1 is now. And this is what everyone will always play through. Stars Reignited, basically what Stars Reignited is the old S1, but then we all had these updates applied to it, right? And those updates are the final S1 map, right? So it's the same as what these guys are now experiencing. So that's just to cover anything up for those guys a bit confused about S1 Plus and hearing it for the first time if you're new to Callof Dragons. But the question is it going to be any harder? And the thing is, it doesn't really feel it. I'm not going to lie, from my S1 Plus journey to S2 in the Dragon Trials, it fell around the same difficulty. So again, like in my first day, I could easily in the first day push to around stage 40 to 50 easily, like just depending on where I ended up. I know I live streamed all of that too, so you could always obviously check out that live stream on it, but I don't believe it's that any much difficult. So that is for coming in chat and ask the question. So just to showcase what this podcast is honestly all about. It's just you guys asking questions while we go through certain things on the podcast, and hopefully maybe in the future while we do it we can get maybe certain guests in, and it'll be a nice little just, you know, calm atmosphere, right? So the next stage in this, and what I want to talk about is still in this area, right? Because they do talk about quite a lot in this phase, and the one area that I haven't addressed yet is the artifact part. So someone earlier in the live stream did mention this, which is a really cool little you know, rewind to what someone asked, and obviously I was going to answer it in this podcast now. You have the artifacts that may not reset their levels, and I personally think this is going to be a big mistake. I'm not going to lie. I do think this is going to be a big mistake, because it does mean for certain players like myself, or even big spenders in the game right now, it means I can max out all of my artifacts, and I know at level 1 I'm always going to be better than a lot of other players that might not be in the exact same position. Yes, you can eventually get to the same stage as me, but the whole premise of it is to reset and make things, you know, perfectly fair. So the whole point of the season reset is to make these things level 1, so everyone else has the same, you know, power, almost the same start. There's no head start, there's no couple steps forward for someone else who has, you know, hoarded maybe dust and stuff like that. So it will be interesting to see what happens. I want to see how it gets added in. My personal thought, I'm going to lie, on the artifacts themselves is I just like the fact with artifacts, maybe someone in the chat will agree here. I just think the whole point of a season reset, especially in the very future, when we're going to have more heroes, we're going to get more artifacts, we're going to get more everything, right, to use in the game. I feel like artifacts is going to be one of those things where each season you actually choose a different artifact. So as you can see now for myself, I have Shadow Blades, I've got Gold Crest, I've got Viola's Bow. So in the next season, maybe I only choose Viola's Bow and Gold Crest and I ignore the Shadow's Blade. You know what I'm saying? Like, it allows me to actually go into a different season, and I'm not expected to use everything, but it allows me to actually choose something and actually try it out. And, you know, maybe I like my Shadow Blades, so maybe I just go Shadow Blades and Gold Crest instead, and I ignore the Viola's Bow this time. You know what I mean? So I think the whole premise of the season reset, again, is kind of to allow the player to experiment, learn, adapt, and then every season, you know, they can change. And like I say, you can almost hustle, You know, you're basically hustling your account. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're having these artifacts, and you're like, I'm not feeling this one this time. But it was a nice go around, you know, and it's cool to see that it allows you to do that. So I like the whole artifact system being a reset. But again, with the patch notes, it seems like a lot of players disagree. So it would be nice to see what happens in the future. This does come out again in November. So November time, this is when the patch is supposed to be announced. They do say it in one of these areas, so hopefully we catch it during the podcast here. Just checking out now in the chat. They say they do think it's fine, to be honest. You just need 5 main artifacts to level 60, which is very true. This is what I'm saying. A lot of players expect to think that they need all 20 artifacts leveled up to win the open field. Well, that's not the point. You only need 5, and you only have 5 marches. And it's cool to have flexibility, I admit, but it still doesn't mean you need all your artifacts to disposal, you know. And the fact that some seasons you might choose to have a double DPS artifact, so you might use Infernal Flame and that, you know, Phoenix Eye, but maybe the next season you change things up and you go Infernal Flame and Tear of Arbon, so you've got a defensive option and an offensive option. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just things you can consider when you're actually playing Callof Dragons in the way season resets actually occur. So I like them. You can tell from maybe in the main video I was a little bit more heated, but even from here you can see, like, I'm all for it, where I hope they don't go too crazy and make it what I would call like Rise of Kingdoms. And another YouTuber did say this in a video, and it was Meower, and I think it's very clever. And it is like almost like Callof Dragons is almost suffering that identity crisis. Like, it wants to be its own game, but then it starts bringing out patches and things like this that brings the game more into a Rise of Kingdoms feel. And like, a lot of players left Rise of Kingdoms and they don't want to play Rise of Kingdoms, they want to play Callof Dragons, right? So I think they need to keep that differential between two, because it's nice to have 2 different games. Some people like the way Rock plays and some people like the way Callof Dragons plays, and I think that's okay, right? There needs to be a different type of game and different, like, you know, almost like niches and tailors to different targeted audience, because not everyone likes the same style of game or grind, right? So the Q&A says that they say we are considering changing partial resets for hero levels. You think this will happen? So yeah, that's the next bit we were going to go into in here, which is a really good question by again Kamim again. So the partial hero level it's going to be interesting on how it works. I do like it if they do it correctly, and because it is almost like a season reset, but it's like a soft cap. So instead of starting from level 1, I could see them starting you from like level 20, because by level 20 it means you have your primary hero and your secondary hero, because it means then in Dragon Trials a lot more players could actually competitively, even free to play, could actually push to level 55 really fast, because the power of 2 commanders is very strong in the early game, especially in a season. So I could see them, you know, changing the hero levels to about level 20 or something like that. But again, in my eyes, I don't see it as too much of a problem, but it's one where I think you guys as the community have to decide, you know, do you want a full reset, do you want a soft cap, or do you want no cap? You know, do you not want any sort of reset at all? So it's very interesting. I like to see where the game's going. It's been 1 year, you remember, for Callof Dragons, so this is now going into the 2nd year. So we're gonna see how this next year is gonna form the game, because normally it's this 2nd year where a lot of the big changes and a lot of the big development happens, where a lot of the players honestly start to move over or try it out because they might be, for example, season 1, season 2, and as they hint in this, which we're going to talk about, season 3, as well as maybe season 4 later down the line, right? So it's very interesting to see what they're doing here. They're talking about here again the Dragon Trials maybe no longer resetting. I think we've already kind of touched on this when we were talking about all of the previous points, but I still think this is a really weird mechanic. It makes sense if they just add into it, but it needs to be one of those things where if you add in levels to the Dragon Trials, it can't be so difficult that, you know, newer players just can't physically do it because they're like always T5 troops, or it's really high amounts of T5 troops. So it'd be interesting to see how this actual Dragon Trial system works. This is the one I'm actually most curious about when it comes into all of the actual gameplay balancing system when it comes to Callof Dragons. They want another question in chat. They want to ask you another thing about hero resets to level 1. You can fix your hero skills since you only unlock your first skill, and if it's only the first 3, then you can fix it. So yeah, that is a very good point again. So that's one thing I didn't actually even consider in my video, which is a really good point to bring up in the podcast. So for example, what we're talking about, and I'm actually going to be using this trick on my Kanara. So if a hero already starts at maybe level 20 and you've got a 1-1-1 hero, then you can't really fix the hero unless you go 5-5 and then 1-1, which is a really weird dilemma, right? Because there's no skill lock in the game, and obviously the skills unlock via level and experience with your stars, right? Since this all is, obviously, they all stick together. So it is interesting to see what happens, because when you do reset to level 1, like I say, you can fix heroes. So you can go and actually respec and put all your skills back into 5 here. And then when you go into the next skill, you could, and like I am technically doing, you know, we are saving our sculptures. We're nearly on 60 already for our Kanara. And that means we might be able to go up to a 5-3-1-1 commander next season, and that's all because of the way the season hero reset system works, and it allows me to actually, you know, choose and almost allocate where I want my skills. So honestly, a really good point to bring up in chat during the live stream. So honestly, big shout out to you guys that are all in here enjoying the podcast that we're doing right now. So let's go back and see what is the next area, and then we'll check out the chat. So the artifact effect, deputy hero power, is it affect PvP? I don't understand what that means, but the artifact effect, so artifacts in general only work for the main primary hero. So if you have an artifact on 2 heroes and you put them both together, only one artifact triggers, right? And that's the primary hero. You don't get any stats or anything from the second artifact. So that's just one little clear up there, hopefully, for you there, so you don't get double stats for PvP. Since the Dragon Trial does not reset, that means we won't get the bonus XP bucks every time we clear stages, and that's another true thing. So it's like they either add new stages and they give you XP bucks for those stages, or they reset the whole Dragon Trials and it gives you the XP bucks. So it's like, it's almost adding new Dragon Trial stages just feels like it's basically season reset anyway, but like harder. It just seems like an extra step that is no longer needed. Like I feel like the basic core functionality, if you want to say, of the game with the season resets makes sense. A lot of players actually, once they've, you know, played through it 1 and 2 seasons, they actually feel accustomed to it and they understand why it's there, and they realize, you know what, I'm actually fair game. Yes, I've got a T5 player I'm against, but if that T5 player isn't playing for the first week, guess what, my 1 week progress is actually way more ahead than that T5 player, because he has to catch up in XP on your hero levels and stuff like that. And it's stuff like, you know, a lot of things that come into consideration when it comes to, you know, an account, especially with power. So it is a really crazy idea. So we'll keep moving on, because there's a lot to go through here. This is to do with, again, like they're addressing what we just talked about. So in this stage, they're talking about the Dragon Trials and how to gain prestige and other concerns, the power of level caps against enemy units, as well as hero resets for your levels. You know, all this sort of stuff, even the 70-day season, how it impacts the season. There's so much that is a massive impact on this game if they go through with this plan. And this is why they say it's irreversible. And this is why I'm really sketchy on it. This is why I'm very honestly taking this very seriously for the game, because I've already done 2 videos technically on it and nearly 3 videos, and now this podcast all talking about this one issue, because this issue we are looking at right now and we are all currently living it. And if you are part of the podcast or watching it right now, you know, maybe a week or a couple of days later, guess what? You are in a moment of history, because whatever happens is going to change the way this game is actually going to be played, right? So it's going to be one of those where, let's see. So we're going to go into the next section. The next section's a little bit more easier. They're a little bit more chilled out, apart from then the bottom section, which is going to be a very hot topic for the podcast. But the next couple of topics in the developer Q&A that we got into was the season summary, migration, and matchmaking. Is there going to be a way for us, the players, to basically see those different stages a lot easier? And they are adding a brand new timeline for the late season, or well, for basically season 2. So you can see, so if you're in a new season, maybe when you make a brand new account in the future, no matter what, you'll be able to hit, hopefully, a special calendar, and that calendar will tell you where you are currently in the season, maybe how many weeks are left, how many days are left until you finish and go on to season 2 or season 3 in the game. And the reason why I say season 3 is because I am talking about the next point, which mentions here season 3. So will cross-season server migration be introduced? This is a very cool topic. It's a very hot topic too. I'd love to hear you guys in chat. Maybe start putting your questions while we're covering it, and then once I've done our little feedback, we'll go to the chat and see what you guys are saying in the community. But, you know, considering the differences in strength between players seasons 1, 2, and 3, we're currently not planning adding the ability to migrate between the servers that are in different seasons. We are considering, though, adding a cross-season migration after season 3 ends. So the way I feel this is structured is very clever, because the way it almost appears is they are going to follow the same almost philosophy as that Rise of Kingdoms, where you have KVK 1, 2, and 3. Then you go into KVK Season of Conquest. So here you're going to have season 1, 2, and 3, and then you might have a special event, you know, season of something, where you're going to pick maybe in the future different types of seasonal events to matchmake in. And when you hit that Season of Conquest mode, that's when you're going to be able to migrate. But you can't migrate between, say, server 2 to 32 until you get to that stage. So if you're in seasons 1, 2, and 3, the only way you're going to be able to migrate is through the current method, which is through the end of the season division, where, you know, whoever you fought against, maybe you made a new ally, maybe you made new friends with the original enemies of, you know, your season, right? Maybe you migrate that way until season 3 and onwards comes. So, oh my lord. Thank you for that in chat. We've got a nice gifted subs by Metal Injection. Absolutely amazing. I know I wasn't going to do this. It might be the one-off for the podcast, since it's the first podcast of this kind, and we're trying to keep it nice and chill. But Metal Injection, thank you for support, my friend, with the 5 gifted subs to GUHBD Hinata. I can't pronounce the last guy, but CM as well. All of these players now are popping up, let's say, on this side or this side. I hate the camera, but on this side, brand new members thanks to Metal Injection. So thank you for support, my friend. So Zanata from server 32 though, BDO, but they can't wait to fight us. Yeah, it would be really nice to see that in the future. So let's carry on with the patch notes. I hope you guys have been enjoying the podcast so far. This is, like I say, trying to be nice, chilled out podcast where we discuss things about Callof Dragons, which could be the patch, could be upcoming changes. It could even be server drama about Callof Dragons, or even maybe something like a story and have a guest on, right? So I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and like, if you have, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button during the live stream, and maybe you'll enjoy the future podcasts that come out on the channel, right? So here we go. Let's go into the next part of the podcast, which is going now into the war pet skills. And this war pet skills, guys, I'm just going to say right now, is going to be the one that is going to be the hottest topic. And I've already made my thoughts very clear on this. But we've also done a video specifically on it. And obviously we've been talking a little bit in chat. So the new question was asked about, you know, the brand new skill slots. So if any skill slots are going to be added to the pets, how is it going to work? They basically made it so it's still going to be replaced by a random skill. So a lot of players, and I've got this in the video, and I know some guys from server 32 have said it, and server 33 feel this as well. They feel disappointed in this response. They kind of feel like, you know, the way this is set out is almost like, you know, this is going to happen and deal with it. You know, it's kind of dismissive, kind of nasty in terms of the way it's been almost put out. Because the way, you know, the saying is like currently each time, it's almost saying like this is how it works. You guys are just maybe a little bit, you know, not the smartest of players and didn't understand how it worked. But in patch 1.02, they are adding clarity on how this system works. So we're going to see how that is. But in my opinion, I just think this should be improved. I don't think they should actually add this, you know, clarity on how this system works. I actually just think they should improve the system and then add the clarity, because at the moment, the way the war pet system works, especially when it comes to skills and you're trying to get those war pets, get those skills to make them 1-star, 2-star, eventually 3-star in the late game once you've got your pet going, right? It costs you so much time and money. And the thing is, if you're not spending money, the amount of time it's going to cost you is easily going to be triple, maybe quadruple the amount of time of a normal person who's, no, I say a normal person, a whale or a big spender in Callof Dragons. Because when you hit that effect where you have so much diminishing returns from skills, it's like you have a almost gambling system and you have to hit the jackpot every single time to go to the next stage, and then hitting the finale is the one which, you know, smashes it out. So when it comes to maybe an you know, an analogy of it, a really good way of almost thinking how the war pet skill system works is, imagine if you had a bag of dice. This is how I like to put it now. We've got a bag of dice, we've got 20 dice in there, and what I need you to do is roll them all, and for every single 6 that you roll, I want you to put it into a separate pile. And keep doing that, and keep doing that for at least 4 times, and see how many 6s you actually roll over time, because you'll see it diminishes and diminishes over time, because obviously the pool of dice is smaller, right? Because obviously you've just, you know, got 6 dice and you've taken them out the pool, and now I've only got 14 dice. Well, this is how the skill system technically works. You know, you're going to be farming those pets, you're farming all of these pool of pets, you've finally got one pet which has the right talent on it, and then you might need to release that pet to get the skill or talent for that, you know, pet. But that's an RNG chance, and then if you've rolled that chance, good for you, you've made it next stage. You're going to go to the next stage, and guess what? You then roll the dice again. And if you hopefully land correctly, you'll learn on the right skill. If not, guess what? All of that effort, all of that time has been basically put to waste. And people who spend a lot of money can obviously in chat right now, if you're only just joining, this is the podcast here. We're talking about, obviously, at the patch, you can interact with me live in the chat. I put anything what you want question wise, and we're going to answer it during these sections, right? So I just think, personally, with the war pets, they need to do either two things. I think, personally, I'm not, you know, the guy who's just going to keep moaning about the war pet system. Obviously, I've got a solution for you guys. I think the way war pets should, honestly, get fixed is one of two ways. So you can go route A, and route A is you keep, like they said, they keep the RNG in the game. And that's fine, but if you're going to keep the RNG in the game for a player, I think you're going to need to allow us to capture more pets. Because by allowing us to capture more pets, it's actually going to allow us to actually feel the odds better. You know, we're going to feel like, okay, this is a bit more consistency because I'm catching maybe 15 or 10 pets a day. I can actually see the actual skills I want more often. And even though you might think, you know, I'm saying more often as like this is going to happen every single day. It might not happen every single day, but it's just like you're giving the players that extra, maybe 5 or 10% extra chance of odds, right, in their favor. And that's what you need to do. And I think players need to have the ability to capture war pets. Now that's route A, right? Or we could go route B. And this is the one which a lot of players have already said, right? Why do you not just allow players to just select a skill slot, you know? There's so much time, money that could be invested into war pets. Players are happily willing as well to invest into war pets, but because of the RNG feature, they feel like their return to investment on their money and stuff like that isn't worth it. So they're not spending any more money on war pets because fundamentally it's just not worth it for them. Yes, it's a feature that is really fun, and yes, it's a feature that you can get behind and everyone can enjoy because it's similar to Pokemon and everyone has that nostalgic feel, you know, of Pokemon. But when you put such a harsh restriction on it, it loses the fun and it loses its identity. And I think that's the problem again with this Q&A. And as Meow said, you know, maybe Callof Dragons at the moment is in a small identity crisis there, right? So I hope you guys have been enjoying it so far. This is, again, the podcast. We've been chilling, having a nice time, talking about the Q&A. If you guys have got any questions, again, whack them in chat. We've got Kameem that did said, once I tried to get a 4th skill and I did it 13 times and didn't get it. And now I just had my luckiest time getting the Berserker Phaedric filled with 6 skills. So that just shows the amount of time and commitment people are putting, and that, honestly, 13 times is a very small amount. We've got pictures and evidence of players rolling 50 plus times to get the skill to land where they want it to be landed. And that's with 2 to 3 open empty slots on their war pet. So there's a lot to discuss. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this section. Maybe, you know, put a timestamp in the podcast and put your comment below on what you think about it, right? So here we're going to go into the nice little areas, little bit of quality of life changes, and I do like how they address this little change. I was one of those players, and I'm still kind of am one of those players that I think it's a little bit cheeky to say, can we get a one-time feature to claim all the Alliance gifts? What they mean by it is when you're in the Alliance gift section, obviously when you're in this area, you have a spam click all, because this is just anything free earned you can get, you know, spam click. But if anyone spends any money, so like Ghost here or Wayne, for example, like any of these players that have spent money, and some players have obviously kept anonymous for their own reasons, right? But anyone who spends money, obviously, they have given this chest to you, even if you're a free-to-play player. And I think it's a very, I wouldn't say disingenuous or disrespectful, but I just don't think it's nice to say, can I just get a mass click button and not actually thank or see the players that are actually spending their hard-earned money, you know, in the game. Maybe it's a hot take, maybe it's something that people may disagree with how I look at things, but in my eyes, you know, if someone is willing to drop £300 or $400 on the game and fill the store with 5, 6 gold chests, for example, well, guess what? you should have to click these buttons and you should thank them for it, because those guys are helping you grow as a player for free. So it's a very hot thing, but that's what the you know, patch notes is talking about. So when we go into here where it says we make the alliance claim gifts a one-tap click, this is the way they're asking about it. But I do like the devs. Like I say, I'm not going to hate the entire patch. I'm not being a big hater. I do love the patch. I've just got, as you can see, some really nitpicky moments when we're talking about it. And that is simply, you know, the alliance gifts section they put is a very clever one, where maybe you click a button and it only opens 10 at a time. But I wanted this to be maybe one step further. So, you know, when you open and it does the 10 and you can see all of the free, you know, different rewards that you've got, at the bottom, instead of saying you have claimed, maybe it's show like you were given by, and then say the 5 or 6 or 2, whoever, you know, spent the money to get those 10 chests. It'd be really cool to put their names at the bottom. So at least then, yes, you spam clicking the 10, but at least the people that have got you those 10 chests are still getting some recognition. You can still see who bought them, and if you want to, you can thank them in the chat. Because I always thank generally all my big spenders, even my biggest supporters like Meliodas, that is in chat having a little bit of a joke during the live stream, pretending to be a free-to-play player while secretly donating another 50 to the stream. So thank you for the support, guys, and I want to say thank you again, everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's hitting the like button, everyone who is honestly enjoying the Scout Report. This is a brand new podcast. I made it for myself, so I can just basically do this whenever I want. I don't have to worry about anything, and I can get guests on, I can get whoever I like on at any time, right? So I hope you guys have been enjoying it. So let's carry on with hopefully the ending area of the podcast, the last little section before we finish things up, and maybe take it into the chat before finishing up things for the podcast, right? So they are adding a really cool feature, which is the multiple character playable feature on PC. So like myself, as you guys know, I am playing on the PC client. I'm going to be able to actually play on my main account and a farm account, technically, at the same time. And the way they've worded this is very clever again, and I want to just clarify this for any of the players that are basically watching and listening to the podcast, right? And the way they have stated this is, we want to ensure, and this is their message, we want to ensure that this feature is not used for malicious purposes. If we detect that a player is taking part in such actions as rallies, gathering, and resource assistance that affect the game balance, we will suspend access to their character. So the way this works is the game balance. This is the very key feature. So for every normal person, you, me, you know, anyone, right? It's not going to affect us because obviously we are law-abiding citizens. We are good Tamarians of the Callof Dragons game. We do as I was told. We farm fairly. We obviously resource send to ourselves. We're using our farm accounts, right? Any of that's perfectly fine. But for example, right now, if they see, for example, a account that might be logged into 2 accounts that are both farming, and then they see another maybe account doing the exact same thing, and then the exact same thing, and they can actually trace to an IP address, maybe one person with 20, 30 accounts that are dual logged in, purely farming to sell as resource. Obviously selling resources against terms and conditions, and that is obviously changing the game balance, because you are giving players extra resources that they shouldn't actually be able to have by just giving them by obviously sending some money, right? So that's what they talk about when it says game balance. The way rallies is, I think the way when they talk about rallies is all about actually when you maybe have a player maybe having 2 accounts, 2 T5 accounts, and he's actually managing to rally with 2 different accounts at the same time. And that's the only thing I can think of when they talk about rallies, maybe someone in chat, maybe someone in the comments, maybe later on in the podcast will obviously clarify what they think as well on that subject, because it is a little bit of a weird one to put as rallies, but it is anything basically to impact the game in a negative way. So if they do something, even in war, which would affect an alliance from effectively winning or losing a war, obviously that's a game imbalance change that would rectify a ban on that account. So that's all that they mean about this. If you're just a normal person, a normal Bob, you know, Andy down the road that just happily farms and just has a farm account that sends their resources to their main account, you guys are fine. Don't worry about it. It's nothing aimed at you. And then we're going into the last little areas. Union chat, they're going to be adding Union chat. Is a really cool feature. They've already done the experimentation with the season preparation chat. So by adding that season preparation chat, they know they can add different ways of getting, you know, alliances in and talking privately. So clearly by doing that, they've been able to expand on making your union have its own chat. So for example, now TM and TMO2 would be able to start talking to each other in the start of November when this comes out. And this is when we was hoping during the podcast it would come, right? This is when the patch is going to go live, November time, which has been said in the mail. We don't have a specific date, just a month, right? So until we get some more details and some more announcements that I can give you guys from the devs, obviously I'll give you that information live, right? So what new upcoming gameplay events are coming up? And this is honestly, these next 2 points are the last 2 points of the patch notes, and this is what makes this podcast easily the saving grace of the patch notes, because they saved it all in my eyes, obviously with the problems that you guys have heard through this podcast so far. As I'm scrolling back up, talking about the PvE side, the season reset side, the artifacts, as well as the war pets, they actually saved it. They did save it, and like I say, it's a good patch. It's still a good patch. I'm just a little bit iffy on a few of the things, right? So what new gameplay events are coming up? So they're adding this really cool weird feature, Behemoth Raids, right? So Behemoth Raids is, as you can see, it's not on the world map. So these are not raids that I think you are competing against Alliance versus Alliance for the Elite Raids. What I think this is going to be, and I'm guessing they're going to change the name. It's not going to be called Behemoth Raid. Maybe it might be called like Behemoth Gauntlet or something like that, I could see. But maybe it is a way where myself, maybe in server 2, and maybe players in server 32 and 33 and 40 and 50 and 60, as you can imagine where I'm going with this. Maybe all of us can go into this matchmaking event that pops up every week, and you can basically click it. You can choose to be a DPS, pick your match, which is a 1 Legion, and this could be DPS, tank, or support, for example. And then the game makes it, right? So the game grabs 30 players out of all the different areas and makes a raid where you could basically fight the Hydra or the Thunder Rock or any of the other behemoths and basically get some rewards and, more importantly, learn. I think it's a really cool feature. You get to learn about how you could actually be better in these raids, especially when you're not really got that much experience. It's a really friendly way to gain experience, even for a new player and free-to-play player in a raid. So when they get that, you know, match ready, they're able to go into these world map raids and compete for the elite frames. So I hope to hear you guys in the chat. I want to hear what your thoughts are in that section. Let me know if you got any questions. I will come back to them. But we've got the final exciting point. There is a little bit of an extra event here. I'm just going to skip over it. I'm not going to lie, guys. It's to do with a treasure map fragment. I'm not particularly too, you know, excited about it until I see some gameplay, you know, on it. But more excitingly, and this is the more exciting moment, is will they be adding new factions? And yes, they are in early stages of designing new factions, and this is plural. There's an S, guys, and this is the cool thing about it, right? So because there's new factions, we know And as we all have been assuming on this channel, if you've been following it from the get-go, we've been talking about the Tales. We've also been doing a lot of stuff about the lore on the live stream, and we've been discussing the potential factions, and Dwarves are definitely going to be one of the factions I can happily say is going to come into the game, definitely. If it doesn't, I'd be very disappointed with the devs. With the amount of people, the amount of community support the Dwarven faction has got in this game. So many people have said they would legit just come and quit Rise of Kingdoms if they can play a Dwarf faction. That is how much people love Dwarves. So it'd be really cool to see this getting added. But there's obviously more factions that they could be adding into the game. And obviously in the comments after the podcast is over, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Obviously, I think they could be potentially making, I'm not going to lie, satyrs. I think the satyrs are going to become their own faction, because the way the satyr faction actually works, with a little bit of lore here during the podcast, is the satyr faction actually is split up into two different actual factions. You have Uma that basically follow their leader, Uma, who is the original leader that stayed with more of the celestial beings and more towards the Wilderberg tribe, and basically formed the coalition with the Wilderberg. But when you look at the other faction, these guys were called the Wanderers, and these guys basically kept, as you can imagine, as the title says, wandered. So these guys just kept moving from different state to state. So they went from Forgotten Lands to Zorland to Burning Lands. They were everywhere in this because they kept getting moved about and they kept adapting to the situations. So it would be interesting to see that maybe the satyrs could be their own possible faction as well in the future. Also, you gotta think, you know, because this is a fantasy based game and I've not really addressed it, but you know, the story can adapt, right? The story could be changed where they add in new factions or new races like you see in season 2 with the dwarves, right? So maybe we get some cyclops or some ogres or some sort of, you know, lizard people, like lizard men, right? All these different types of mythical beast men tribes that are almost existent in, if you want to call it, like Dungeons and Dragons, are almost accessible to the devs to bring into the game and to bring their own twist and bring their own love and lore to that faction. And I think that's a very clever way of doing it, because by bringing these new factions in, it does fill in the gaps of heroes that players need. And this is a little bit of a topic I've mentioned in another video, you might have watched it. But by adding new factions, you have new starting heroes. So that means you have a new epic hero, which could be a new infantry or mage hero, for example. And then a lot of the time, if you've noticed, when you look at a actual tribe, a tribe generally does have some sort of basics. So if we look at archers, archers always had, you know, your Craig, you always have your Gwanwyn at the bottom, and then you have Nico. So you have all these like baseline commanders, and in season 1 you get, as you guys know, the Canara unlock. So you have the support in early stages in season 1. Same with when we look at cavalry. Cavalry, you have the Alistair, which a lot of people know of, and then you have Emrys, and then you get Bakshi. So you have a lot of support there again for a starting civilization, starting unit choice for the players that wanting to play cavalry. And then infantry, again, you can say the same. Infantry has Madeline through the lucky wheel that you will get, but without a lucky wheel, you still get Groot, and you have Garwood, and you get Bakar as these, you know, starting foundational heroes, right? And then, like we said, you get Madeline later on. And when you get into season 2, you're starting to see, you know, we have, you know, extra cavalry heroes like Forendil and Theodore coming out, and potentially there's going to be some more, you know, heroes coming out that might be infantry or mage. But the problem is, if you look, the big issue is the mage players. The mage players literally have Valen to work with. Because if you're not a spender in Callof Dragons, and not every single person is a spender, and I think that's why a lot of you guys in the community enjoy the channel and then enjoy the content here, is I make the content for spenders and non-spenders, free to play, and you know, the guys who do like spending money. And the thing is, you know, Lilia is not accessible to every person, and because she's not accessible to every person in the early game, you only have Valen, Waldia, and obviously Alwyn, and then Atheus to your disposal. So it'd be really interesting if they bring in a brand new faction. Maybe that new faction brings a new legendary hero as well, and it allows the mages just to have that extra give in the early game, so then when they do get to maybe season 2 or season 3, when eventually their first 2 heroes come out through the Lucky Spin and Strongest Lord, at least they've got sufficient amount of heroes compared to everyone else, right? Because everyone else is going to have 4 to 5 different heroes compared to the mages that are going to have like 2 to 3. So I really do think for the patch notes, they did a really good job addressing that possibility. And I think that gives a lot of hope to the players in the Q&A and the Callof Dragons, you know, future in the next year. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. This has been the Scout Report. I'm just checking chat right now if you guys have got any questions on the, you know, Callof Dragons universe or anything to do with the Q&A. You can ask away right now before we end the things on the podcast, and while I wait for your guys' questions to finish out the whole podcast, we're just going to talk. We're just going to have a nice little discussion about the game, right? Just to finish things up. And if there isn't no questions, guess what? We will just end things there, right? So I must admit, personally, it's been a year. I've been playing the game for a year. This is the, you know, my first podcast officially on the channel under the podcast's name, so hopefully you guys should be able to find this content when it comes out. But you know, it's been a blast. You know, for 1 year we've experienced a lot. You know, we've had Nico go from an attack speed hero to counterattack and normal attack damage hero, and they removing attack speed, but then reintroducing attack speed as rapid fire with Syndron, which is a really clever way of doing it, because that's how basically everyone initially thought attack speed worked, is how rapid fire is now. And obviously they've done really cool changes with adding the rally mechanics in, testing that out, taking it out, and now re-adding the rally mechanics so they attack back. So we expand on that open field, you know, gameplay push mechanic. So you can see they're able to do a lot of stuff. And in the year, I think for a game that's brand new, obviously it does have some foundational blocks to work from, but as a game that is brand new, it honestly is doing fantastic. And even the CGIs that you've seen, that's played in the background, and the CGIs for season 2 and stuff are all amazing. They're all fun, they're really good quality, and it gives really good expectations and high hopes for this game. And as I see, there is no actual questions in the chat, so I think this podcast has actually been a success, and you guys have been asking the questions during the podcast, and I've answered the ones that you guys have been waiting on. And then you guys have just been sat listening, enjoying the discussion while you guys have been maybe playing Callof Dragons, maybe you'd be re-listening this podcast again while you're doing something. The whole point of it is just so you guys and myself can just have a nice gentle discussion about, like I say, the game. It could be upcoming patches, it could be gameplay mechanics, it could be hero discussions, internal drama on a server, even brand new guests. So all of those are coming your way. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for that. This is the Scout Report, episode 1, tuning out. I want to say thank you to all the guys that have subscribed, Metal Injection for all the gifted subs, and Meliodas for the tip during all of this podcast that was given live, and obviously it was shown on this little pop-up here for you guys. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this brand new setup. Obviously it needs a little bit of work, I know, but it's something that hopefully becomes a baby of the channel, and we all can come together, hopefully maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, and do this together and talk about the game. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the support, and until the next scout report, guys, like we always say on every video, stay safe guys, stay sneaky, and peace out.